Okay, so here's the camera set up right in front of the Christmas tree. I'm going to toggle the camera on so you can see the LCD on the back. Let me touch the shutter release button halfway down. Notice the light meter. What I'm teaching with the law of reciprocity is essentially just for your conceptual understanding of what your camera is doing in the background and what you can specifically be doing if you're shooting on manual. But even before you understand the law of reciprocity, or another name for that is equivalent exposures, essentially you're just really rotating a dial on your camera until that little dash goes under the zero. And it doesn't matter what camera brand you have, if you're shooting with a DSLR or mirrorless, somewhere where you have controls over your shutter speeds and f-stops, they all have these built-in light meters, with I'm showing you here on the back of the camera, but you see this exact same part right here inside your camera, so you don't have to take your eye away from the viewfinder. You're just spinning it until you get under zero. In photography, always set your ISO first. If you don't know what to do, set it at ISO 100. That's perfect for pretty much everything. It's specifically meant for like bright outdoor light. ISO 400 is a great ISO for indoors or where you need a bit more speed in your other settings, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So how do you set your ISO? Well, usually there's a button on the camera, on the back, on the top, and it's labeled ISO, and just touch it. Mine is up here. And I'm showing full stop increments. So I have ISO 100, 200, there's 200, ISO 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 64, 12,008, and they go up to like over 100,000 depending on how much money you spend on your camera. But again, never ever leave it on auto. That's the one thing to never leave on auto. It's okay to use auto white balance. It's okay to use auto focus, but never use auto ISO. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna touch the ISO button to get back. I'm gonna hit the shutter release button again to activate my light meter. So if I spin it to almost a second and I take the picture, so that's the exposure at almost a second at f8 at ISO 100. I need to show you one more thing. If I need to change my f-stops, usually there's a little AV button or a whole separate spinny wheel on the back, or a gear stick. There's usually something that lets you control your shutter speeds up here and your f-stops down here. This camera at the top by the shutter release button is using one wheel to control both the shutter speed and the f-stop. And it's doing that by I need to know that I need to press this AV button, and it makes that a multi-function spinner. And you see that how my f-stops are changing? Now, I know you've already learned in my other lectures that most cameras will show you these things in third stop increments. So no matter where you start at, 1, 2, 3 clicks will always be one full stop. So even if you start off in a setting you're not familiar with, just go 3 clicks, and you will be one full stop from where you started. But again, we know 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, F8, 1, 2, 3, F11, etc. You know how to do all that. If I were to say I want as much stuff in focus as possible, so I'm going to automatically go all the way to, well, this camera goes all the way up to F36, it looks like. But the most common stopping point is F22 for most cameras. I'm going to tap the shutter release to activate my light meter. You see it's negative almost 3 stops, 2 3/4 stops, right? So I'm going to just spin my shutter speed dial. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just spinning it one way until I see it going towards that 0. Once it goes to the 0, then that's where I need to be. It looks like it's going to be an 8-second exposure at f22 at ISO 100. So 8 seconds at f22, and then let's say I want to change my f-stop all the way as low as it'll go, which I have a variable aperture zoom lens, and I'm zoomed in all the way to 135. My lens is 18 millimeter to 135 millimeter, which is a great zoom lens. It goes from wide angle all the way to a portrait length telephoto, which is really nice. But because it's a variable aperture lens, well, it makes it more affordable for me for sure. But it means I'm only going to get f5.6 as my fastest f-stop, which is fine. Let me hit the shutter release button. Okay, now look, it's way overexposed, over 3 stops. I just have to spin it. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, because remember, bulb is where you determine the shutter speed. So I'm going to spin it the other way. Now notice again, most cameras will go down to 30 seconds nowadays, but I need to activate my light meter again just by tapping that shutter release button. And see, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I know I'm setting ISO 100. I know I'm purposely choosing an f-stop, and I'm just spinning this until it gets to 0. And can't quite get there. There we are. So almost a half of a second. That's a half a second. See how it's a little sensitive? And it's okay if it's a little sensitive. That just means it's a little sensitive. No biggie. So I'm going to take this at half a second at f5.6 at ISO 100. This shot is just like the other shot. And when I say that, I'm talking about the exposure.
Wait, there's a bonus tip.
Yes!
Now, what if I wanted to vary the same thing with my shutter speeds? Let's say I want the most optimal f-stop, which generally at f8 tends to be the sharpest part of your lens. But again, we're really nitpicking. Any of those f-stops are going to do just fine. And then I tap that shutter release button to activate my light meter, and again, I'm just spinning. So 1 second at f8. What I'm showing you is all of these images are identical, and that's the law of reciprocity. You can use any combination of your shutter speeds, f-stops, and even your ISO to get the shot that you want creatively. So basically, the exposure triangle is made up of these three things: your ISO, your shutter speed, and your f-stop. And when you're just starting out, and full manual is intimidating, which again, all full manual is you just get full choice over your shutter speed and f-stop independently. But when you're just starting out, consider just shooting either AV or TV, or again, in some cameras, it's called A or S. A or AV is for aperture priority, TV or S is for shutter speed priority, and that means basically you choose your shutter speed on shutter priority, and the camera is going to do all that dial twisting for you, so you never even have to see what's going on. I'm going to change my dial right now from manual to AV. Toggle my camera on. See, it's totally gotten rid of my shutter speed control, and now it's activated fully. I don't have to hold this AV button down because it knows that's all I want. Now notice what's happening to the light meter. Even though I'm changing how much light is coming in my camera, what's not changing? The light meter, because it's doing all the law of reciprocity or the equivalent exposure stuff in the camera. So let's F22. And then it says that's going to be 5 seconds. And again, you would go to F22 if you want everything in focus. Now let's say I want only one thing in focus, which unfortunately I'm so far away from my subject that you're not going to see a big focal difference because the plane of the things I'm photographing are very much on the same plane. But again, notice how nothing changed on my light meter. And now it's saying almost a half a second. It's like 1/3 of a second. And now I'm going to change my camera to TV. And again, some cameras are S. And now it just gives me control over my shutter speeds only. And it doesn't even show me my f-stops because it's assuming I don't care. So I'm just going to like, well, what would it be if I shot it at 1/1000th of a second? I'm actually surprised it would take that shot. What happened? It says it's balanced, but what it's doing is it's only giving me the exposure for the highlight. So it's not even being totally honest with me, right? So if you're ever using this TV and it's not giving you what you want, just go back towards the brighter light. This TV and it's not giving you what you want, just go back towards the brighter light. Let's try a normal 1/60th. And remember, anything under a 60th, you've got to be on a tripod. So what are we seeing? It's telling me this is an okay exposure, but it's not. It's too dark, right? So that's some of the limitations of TV and AV. You don't get full control, and you won't see what's going on until after you take the shot. But again, you can always just, randomly spin it and just keep trying. But that can be a waste of time. That's why I like full manual. Let me go back to full manual. So there's AV, full manual. And so I get to choose right away the exact exposure that I want. If I activate my light meter, I just spin it. I just spin my light meter. I just rotate my dial on the top until I see that going in the direction I want, back and forth. And I don't have to do it that many times. I'm only doing it for you. So if it were just +1 stop, I'd go 3 clicks to be perfectly under the 0. But your goal is just to get it under the 0 so it'll be well exposed. There we go. That's how easy it is.
Hey, if you like this video, it helps. You can help me. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it. Take care. I like subscribers.
That's awesome! Whoa! Yes! Oh my god, I did! This is...
Hey, you stayed to the end. You know what that means? You're awesome. I'm talking about you. Now get out of here.